Welcome to One of a Kind podcast. Slay that stage, your backstage pass to the minds of world champions of public speaking.
Discover the stories, the strategies, and the skills of world-class speakers and get ready to transcend your fear of public speaking and slay every stage life presents to you.
Hello, and welcome back to your very own podcast, Slay That Stage, with your hosts, Ayesha, Hussain, and Tanvi, Bhatt. Yes, you've guessed it correct. Our guest today is yet another champion, World Champion of Public Speaking 2000. Tanvi, would you like to bring him in?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Aisha. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us again and again and again in your own pursuit of personal and professional mastery of speaking like a true rock star and slaying every stage life presents to you. Today, we are excited to be speaking to someone who's been in the business of professional public speaking for over 2 decades. His name is Ed Tate, and such an honor to welcome Ed today. Ed, if you are living under some rock somewhere and you've never heard of him, is an award winning international keynote speaker who won the so called American Idol of Public Speaking, which is a Toastmasters International competition, where he became the 2000 World Champion of Public Speaking. Since then, till date, it has spoken in across 50 states, 25 countries, and across 5 continents. Wow, how can you imagine accomplishing that kind of a speaking footprint? I'm truly intrigued and impressed at the same time. Ed, for those of y'all who are being introduced to him for the very first time, has also earned the CSP designation from National Speakers Association, which is a huge honor bestowed on barely 12% of its members. In addition to this, Ed is also a faculty member of Dr. Robert Cialdini Institute of Ethical Influence in New York. He's been working and inspiring and empowering leaders across multinationals like GlaxoSmithKline, Dell, AstraZeneca, GM, Hallmark, MDRT, Nestle, KPMG, Verizon, Johnson & Johnson, and the list goes on. Not only the last 20 years of being a professional speaker has enabled Ed to transform lives of thousands of leaders and audiences across the world, being in the business for over 2 decades. And prior to that, Ed has touched the lives of corporates that he's worked with by selling over $500 million in products and services coming from a sales background, I believe. So, without much ado, let's have Ed Tate join us on the stage.
Well, thank you. I love being in your show, but I love the title of your podcast, Slay the Stage. That is an awesome title. So I was just like, as soon as I saw this, I was like, I'm in. I'm in. Yeah, I didn't even read the rest of the email. I was just like, slay the stage. I'm in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed, and welcome to Slay That Stage. It's a humble attempt and a mission for me and Ayesha, who are the co-hosts of this podcast, to bring the knowledge, wealth, wisdom of insights of extraordinary orators and world champions like you to mortals like us, as well as everyone else who wants to become an orator par excellence in our own journey. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start off with one comment, and I think you already get this, but there's no one way to do this. There's no one way to be successful in speaking, be it Toastmasters or professionally. And that's the good news. And what I mean by that is there's room for your voice. There's room for everyone's voice. So again, there's no one specific way of doing this. And if someone tells you there's only one way, I'm going to invite you to walk away from that person.
Interesting.
Wow. When you say there's like various ways to do this, not one way.
Yes.
The thought that comes in my mind, and it's like right away, just like a light bulb. How important? Because again, it's an art. So
Yes.
How important is that when you say you need a coach? Because I've read it multiple places where it goes like, oh, nobody is a born speaker. Don't see it's a gift. It's a skill that can be coached. There are many books. But when it comes to selecting the coach, as you said, there is no one way. How do you decide who's the right coach?
Wow, that's a great question. I think there's several things. Number one is, has the person actually done it? Have they been successful at whatever that is? And I'm speaking about coaches in general. I'm not talking about necessarily public speaking coaches. I hire coaches on a regular basis. Like right now, my coach is a lady by the name of Lisa Lauder out of Canada. She's currently residing in the United States. She charges like north of $30,000, and I've hired her. She's not a speaking coach. She's a business coach, because when
Hmm.
COVID took place, I lost over 35 speaking engagements literally within 24 hours.
Right.
And I wanted to look out for my family. So I needed someone who had expertise in terms of being successful running businesses. And she did that for me. She, taught me how to look at things differently. She challenges me on a regular basis, etc. So, and how I found her, I actually was speaking in Florida someplace, met her, got her book. I really liked her message, really resonated with me. So I stalked her. I stalked her online. I signed up for her newsletter, and, and I bought several of her books, etc. And then finally, I remember when COVID hit, when it was announced here in the United States that everything was shutting down, and my clients were calling me and says like, "Hey, this is canceled. This is canceled. This is canceled." I
Right.
called her that day and I said, "Hey, I need a coach. I need someone who's going to help me get through this. I need someone who can help me think outside of myself, because right now I'm so focused, I'm so fearful in this moment about what's going to happen to me, that I need someone who can think outside of that." So part of my criteria for looking for a coach is someone, who's done it, who's been successful. She runs a multi-million dollar business, which again has nothing to do with speaking.
Hmm.
And and again, she's been successful for this for multiple decades, etc. And she has this history I mean, like there were like dozens upon dozens of people on their website who gave like raving reviews and testimonials. So my advice is, number one, someone who is ahead of you, someone who's already doing it, not who's talking about theoretically, because there's a lot of people out there, like for example, on LinkedIn, it's just absolutely amazing how many people out there are professionals or speakers and who've never freaking done it. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing, in my opinion. So that would be the criteria for me. And the other thing is someone that resonates with you, and someone you feel that you could have a relationship with, that you could be friends with. So that was something else that I looked at, because in this case, this is our this is our fourth year. We're going into our fourth year working together, and Lisa Lauder is like one of my best friends. So that's a criteria that I use in terms of selecting a coach.
That really resonates with me. The coaches that I've had, and not just that, even when I decided that we are looking for a partnership, I think Tanvi and I clicked as friends, and I think that's where this whole beautiful partnership began. Um, on the note of coaches, and this, what you said was makes so much sense, but I want to also get Tanvi's opinion, because we both are coaches as well.
Mhm.
What you want to add to that, Tanvi?
I really find myself nodding my head and hopefully physically as well every time you said each of the points of how you selected a coach. I think when I selected my coach last year, which was as Asha knows very well, Craig Valentine, to be
Hmm.
my mentor and guru in public speaking.
One of my best
I
friends.
Yep.
Of course we've heard of that. I chose Craig as my coach and mentor because he was as unlike me as possible. His brand of speaking is completely different than mine, and that is exactly the skill set that I wanted to inculcate in myself. So that's also very important. Choose someone who helps you, think unlike yourself and brings in a skill set that you covet and aspire to have, which is completely outside your comfort zone, your boundaries of possibilities also that you can have for yourself. So that is my take on that, Aisha.
And I've had multiple coaches throughout my 20 plus year career. So for example, I won the world championship in the year 2000.
Hmm.
2001 here in America, we had 9/11. And again, the entire speaking industry shut down. So here I just left my corporate job. I had like you know, a well-paying job, six figures, if you will, deep into the
Yeah.
six figures. And all of a sudden I left that job, and all of a sudden the entire speaking industry shut down. So I hired a guy by the name of Alan Weiss, and Alan Weiss helped me get through that. He also taught me about um, something called value-based fees. In my opinion, and again, this is, by the way, this is one person's opinion. Just because I'm saying it doesn't mean that you have to agree with it. So I give everyone who's on this podcast, you can disagree with me. It's okay. This is just Ed's opinion. This is my come from, and I'm not telling you what you should or should not do. But one of the things that Alan taught me was that it is one of the least appealing ways to charge is by the hour. He has something called value-based fees. So, for example, last night I was up until 2:00 in the morning, submitting a proposal for today. And the proposal, there's not one hourly element in it. What I did in this case, I found out what the customer was trying to do. And they're trying to grow their revenues and their profits by a certain percentage. And once I found out what that number was, and one of the problems and challenges they have is they have like 13 conferences throughout the year. And usually they only get 1 or 2 new customers per class out of this. I know for a fact I can help them increase that number. So conservatively, I says, okay, instead of 1 to 2, I can, if we get it up to 4, just for one class. That says let's ignore the 5 or 6 other classes. Let's say we just get it up to 4 for your 13 workshops or seminars that you have throughout the year. Mathematically, it's over $800,000 in revenue. So I'm able to monetize the problem. And because I'm able to monetize the problem, my proposal is being presented today to the CEO. As a matter of fact, as soon as I get off this call, we're going to have a conversation about that. But Alan taught me value-based fees as opposed to hourly fees, because here's a problem with hourly fees. There's only so many hours that you could work. Okay. True. And there's a limitation to that. So anyway, so Alan helped me there. I had another coach here in America. We had the economic crisis of 2007. And again, I found myself, how am I going to make it through this? So this was like we called the Great Recession here. Well, I hired another coach who was, her name is Colleen Francis. And she's an expert on LinkedIn. She's the #1 sales resource on LinkedIn. And her company is called Engage Selling. So I hired her to be my sales manager. So I want you to think about this. I hired someone to yell at me on a weekly basis. Hey, how many phone calls have you made? How come you haven't done this? How you haven't done that? And again, I literally, my business at the time was a $500,000 business. And within like days of the economic crisis starting, several of my big clients went out of business and I had nothing. After working with her for 45 days, I was able to generate about $52,000 worth of revenue starting from scratch. And 1 year later, that number was over $290,000 worth of business. Wow. So I'm always going to have a coach, but I'm going to have a coach for the skill set that I feel that I need. Alan Weiss was business and proposals. Colleen Francis was I needed sales. I needed deals. Okay. And Lisa Lauder today is helping me run my business more efficiently.
Amazing. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important that every stage when we're outgrowing ourselves, we are going to need a different level or stratosphere of coach or skill set to become a version that sometimes we can't even possibly believe that we are capable of becoming, right?
Yes.
On that note, I'd actually like to add something that Craig says, what got you here will not get you there.
You there. Yep.
So it's something that's always, ever since he's said that phrase, has been with me that, okay, that's got me here. I need a next teacher, a next coach, who can take me to the next level. And I think that's a very good mindset, especially for new aspiring speakers, because you say, okay, I've learned everything. No, you can never learn everything. You always need a next coach who can take you to the next level.
Exactly. And the other thing too, another element. So I hire coaches professionally. I call it, you have to invest for your interest, because here's what I've discovered is that if you pay for nothing, you rarely pay attention. Yes. If you pay for nothing, you rarely pay attention. Lisa Lauder has my attention. with the tens of thousands of dollars I'm paying her. She tells me to do something. Guess what? I do it. I do it with urgency. you know, you know. But the other element that I have is, you mentioned Craig Valentine. Craig Valentine is one of my best friends in the world. Craig Valentine is the reason I got into competing in the first place. And we meet on a monthly basis. We've been meeting on a monthly basis. I'm going to say myself, Darren LaCroix, Mark Brown, other world champions in public speaking on a monthly basis. I'm going to say for the past 16 or 17 years.
Wow.
So that's another source of thoughts, ideas, etc. I also have a mastermind group that has nothing to do with the speaking business whatsoever. These people are entrepreneurs. I have like one person who's an online expert, another person who's a real estate developer, another person who's an expert in cryptocurrency. These individuals, one person who's an engineer, and on his side hustle, he just started a winery. You know, a very diverse group of people and individuals. So I just don't have this one mindset, if you will, or this one lane. And having your own mind, your mastermind group, is another way of like getting better as well.
Interesting. So while we were speaking about, what your journey has been since 2000, I'm really curious to know why even compete? Yes, you mentioned Craig inspired you, but was there any other reason apart from Craig's presence in your life as a friend?
All right. How I competed in the first place, two stories. Okay. Story number one, my sister Dana, this was like 1997. My sister Dana, one day she calls me up and she says, I want to get into the speaker business. Now, for me, I thought this was weird. This was odd because in high school, I had a cousin. His name was Ricky. And in high school, we were DJs. We would DJ parties. So when it came to stereo equipment, I was an expert. And when my sisters told me that she wanted to be a speaker, and I'm saying to myself, well, I mean, you get into speaker business. That's why only speakers. Right now the money's in surround systems. Why only speakers? And she says, no. She says, I want to get into professional speaking. And I looked at her and said, that's a job. And she said, yes. And she had this book. It was by a lady by the name of Dottie Walters, and it was called Speak and Grow Rich. And I said, let me borrow the book. So I borrow the book. I read the book within 2 days. Anyway, I have a habit, and that is, as you can see, I have a library of books in back of me. Yeah. And I'm going to say about 20% of the authors, I have a habit. I call up the authors of books and I ask them questions. And about 20% of the authors over the years have actually responded via email, or I've actually had phone conversations with them. So I call up Dottie Walters. She lives in Phoenix, Arizona. I get her assistant. Her assistant says she's currently on tour and she'll be back in about 2 weeks. I'm about to hang up and I said, okay, I'm curious, where is she? They said she's in Denver, Colorado. I was calling from Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. And I said, where is she speaking? She's speaking at a place called the Colorado Free University. By the way, ladies, there's nothing free at the Colorado Free University. Just in case you're curious, So I pay my money to the Colorado Free University to attend this workshop. It's approximately 4 o'clock. She's going to be speaking at 5 o'clock. I race across town to make it there.
Right.
And I meet two other ladies. One lady is a lady by the name of Christy Ward, who's one of my best friends to this day. Eventually, Christy would hire me as a professional trainer, and I would work for the largest training company in America, a company called Career Track, for 2 years. The other lady I would meet was a woman by the name of Ruby Newell Legner. Ruby would eventually become the president of the National Speakers Association. Ruby says to me, she says, hey, let's have lunch on Monday. So I wanted to give you the timeline. I'm having this conversation with my sister on Tuesday.
Okay.
I call up the that office for that particular speaker on Friday. I'm there on Friday night. By the following Tuesday, I'm enrolled in the National Speakers Association's Speaker Academy. It is for aspiring speakers. So I go from having never heard of the speaking industry to being in a program for it. That's story number one. Story number two is a couple of weeks later, I keep hearing this thing about Toastmasters. I have no clue. But by the way, I just want to set the context here. I'm actually enrolled in a professional speaking program for aspiring speakers, having never heard of Toastmasters. I'm
I
kind of
believe
doing it backwards. I'm doing it backwards. Okay. So anyway, I keep hearing Toastmasters, Toastmasters, Toastmasters. So a friend of mine, her name is Nancy Spurry. And by the way, this is like a side hustle for me. This is like, this is part-time. This is a hobby. This is nothing really serious. And because I'm an executive at a computer company.
right.
And one of my colleagues, Nancy Spurry, she says, I'm going to this Toastmasters meeting. I says, I've been hearing about this thing for weeks. And I says, well, when are you going? She says, it's on Thursday at 7:00. I said, I'll pick you up tomorrow night. And she says, it's in the morning. And I'm thinking to myself, Toastmasters, 7:00 in the morning. These people are going to be drinking alcohol in the morning. I'm in. I want to see what's happening. And I was so disappointed. The only thing they drank was water, coffee, tea. There was no alcohol at all. And there was, by the way, there was no toasting.
I know.
So I meet another guy by the name of Randall Shelton. Randall Shelton is the founder of the club. So Nancy and we join. And about 4 months later, Randall says to me, you need to sign up for the World Championship of Public Speaking. He says, you're really, really good. And I kind of ignored him because at the time I was busy with my job. There's no way I can enter this contest based on that. But I got a new job. I became the training director for a local newspaper. And I was no longer traveling. And Randall says to me, hey, now you can enter the contest. And I'm thinking to myself, what's this guy what's the deal with this contest? What's up with this? And he harassed me for the next year and a half. And it got to the point where it got awkward. I was thinking about quitting because I just felt so weird because I'm going to have this conversation with Randall again. So I said, Randall, here's the deal. I'm going to enter this contest one time and one time only. And after I lose, we will never have this conversation again. Deal? And he had the biggest smile on his face. And he just started laughing. He says, okay. And he walked away as if he knew something that I didn't. Have you ever had that experience? Someone sees something in you that you don't even see in yourself?
Yes, that's the reason I'm here.
Fast forward, I win the contest. And Randall saw something in me I never saw in myself. So that's how I got into the contest. My only reason for competing was to get Randall Shelton off my back.
Wow. Amazing. How did you and Craig meet? I'm very curious. What is
okay? Another story. I'm a Toastmaster, right? So, the year before I competed, the president of our club, he was actually I think they used to be called district governors. He was the district governor. And he said, hey, Ed, would you like to present at the Toastmasters convention in Chicago? Chicago is my hometown. This is the 1999 convention. I said, sure. So I put together a workshop, etc. And if you were giving a workshop, you got a free pass to the World Championship of Public Speaking. So again, keep in mind, Randall Shelton has been harassing me this entire time. I have no idea what this thing's about. And I said to myself, okay, let's see what this thing's about. So anyway, it's a 1999 World Championship of Public Speaking. And one competitor comes out, and he's Albert Mensa. I'll never forget it. He was from Africa. And he comes out with an African suit. So for example, he has this little hat on. It is very, very colorful. And it's called a dinka. And the name of his speech was Underneath We're All the Same. He has the audience laughing, and it's profound, and he has these really deep messages. And then at the end of his speech, he takes off this very, very colorful gown. He's wearing a suit, and he says, Underneath We're All the Same. And I said, that guy is going to win this. He's going to win the World Championship. There's no need for the other competitors to come out. That guy, he's going to win it. And then the final competitor comes out, and it's Craig Valentine. Right. And he just blows away the competition. And I remember thinking to myself, and by the way, my seat was so far back, at this particular event that the speech contest was a rumor. But I said to myself, I'm not as good as Craig. I knew that at that time. I said, I don't think I could beat Craig, but I thought I was good as the other ones. So finally, when I decided to compete, I said, you know what? I'm going to just enter the contest. And again, it wasn't to see if I could win. It's just to see how far I could go.
Correct.
At the convention, they always have an announcement as to where the next convention is going to be and where the World Championship is going to be the following year. It was going to be in Miami Beach, Florida, at a place called the Fontainebleau Hotel. I worked for this seminar company, and I actually 2 weeks before had been at the Fontainebleau Hotel. I had actually been on that stage. So literally, it's the first time in my life I was able to visualize. I mean, I didn't have to visualize. I was there. And I said to myself, I want to be on that stage. That was my goal. My goal wasn't to win the contest. It wasn't about winning. It was just to see if I could make it to that stage. And I discovered something about life. It's never about the how. It's the what. I knew what my what was. I knew I wanted to get on that stage, but I didn't know how. And sometimes people stop seeking a goal because they're so focused on the how. Here's what I've discovered. If your what is very clear, the how will show up. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Amazing. So now, from the biggest win of your life, I am curious to take you to a polar opposite moment, perhaps. Was there ever a time where you believe and you accept that you failed miserably as a speaker? And then what made you still get back up on the stage?
Wow. So I win the World Championship of Public Speaking, and oh man, I could still feel the beads of sweat rolling down my back on this one. I coach people, and I coach executives. I coach them on how to breathe life into their presentations. I coach sales teams on how to win high stakes presentations. In fact, like my proposal is teaching this group of people who are in the automotive industry how to pitch, how to sell from the stage. And I teach them that nervousness is a good thing. Nervousness is a sign that you care. And the two times in my life, and I'm going to talk about one, the absolute worst time in my life was a time when I felt no nervousness at all. In fact, my mindset was I was arrogant. I've got this. No problem. So here's the backstory. I had been invited to speak in Saudi Arabia for the first time. I was very nervous. I had heard all these, you hear all these different crazy rumors about this country, etc. And the other thing I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to prepare like I've never prepared before. So I really studied their culture. I made sure that this presentation was for that specific audience. And I crushed it. I knocked it out of the park. They invite me back 2 years later. And just before I go out, I'm speaking in Montreal. And I have one of these amazing experiences on stage in Montreal. So mentally in my head, I have the audience from Saudi Arabia 2 years ago. They're on the plane with me, as well as the audience from Montreal. They're on the plane with me. Therefore, I'm overconfident. I've got this. There are over 1,000 people. And it was like one of my worst performances ever. I could tell that I was not connecting with the audience. Like I said, I felt the beads of sweat rolling down my back. And what had happened was I did not prepare as I had prepared before. This audience is completely different. They're not an American audience. I had all these American idioms in my speech, which meant nothing to this audience. For example, there's an expression called the whole 9 yards. Now, a lot of Americans think it's an American football expression. It is not. It is a World War II expression from battleships. A shell on a battleship was launched by gunpowder, which was 9 yards. So when someone would say, "Hey, did you give it to him?" Yes, I gave him the whole 9 yards. That's the origin of that particular idiom. Well, if you're from Saudi Arabia, it doesn't matter if it's a World War II or a American football idiom. They're not going to get it. They're not going to understand it. And my speech was laced with dozens upon dozens of American idioms. So I called up a friend of mine. Her name is Lisa Jo Landsberg. It's 1 o'clock in the morning in Saudi Arabia, but I think it's like 9 or 10 o'clock back in the United States. And I just told her I failed miserably, etc. And she said something, and she had an American idiom that she shared with me, which I had never heard before. And she said, Ed, you've got a lot of junk in your trunk. And I'm saying to myself, what does that mean? And she said, your 50% is better than most people's 100%. Give yourself some grace. She said, are you going to be presenting to this audience again? I said, yes, I've got 3 more presentations in front of the same audience. She says, do you want to feel this way again? I said, no. And she said, do better. So I stayed up all night. I literally stayed up all night. I tore up the 3 presentations I had planned, and I started all over again from scratch. And I won that audience back over. So that was my worst, absolute worst experience on stage.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing it so candidly. And I totally agree. I think it's more important to reach out to someone who actually sees us during our worst phoenix moments of our life, just to instill that one, ray of hope and sunshine, because sometimes we don't even know what we are good at, and others can see that in us.
Yes.
Right? And I loved
I
what she said
actually,
about now 50% is better than rest's 100%. Beautiful.
something that clicked to me when you were talking about preparing for the audience. But now you're talking about you were talking to in Montreal, that's Canadian audience, talking to Saudi Arabia, that's Arab audience. But when you're talking at world stage, like world champion of public speaking, how do you decide? And this is because I think I'm coming from a contestant's perspective, because that has to be a global message.
Mm-hmm.
For that kind of audience, what kind of research goes in, and how do you decide what message would resonate with on global platform?
Because I've traveled internationally, I've been able to I've discovered that regardless of culture, there's certain things which are universal. So, for example, again, I had heard that Saudi Arabia is a male-dominated society. So whatever the man says goes. But I was at this party in Saudi Arabia, and the wife looked at her husband. She says, "Time to go." And then the guy didn't leave right away, and she gave him a look, and then he left. And I said to myself, "Oh my God, I've seen that look. My wife gave me that look too. I know that look." And that was the great aha for me. There's certain things, regardless of culture, regardless of politics, regardless of where you're from, they are universal, and they're embedded in emotions. Raising children, aspirations for your job, a loss of a loved one, an illness. These are universal things. So when I looked for my speech, the universal messages, the things which weren't American, the things which weren't based on a country or a culture or a religion or a faith, if you will. I look for those universal elements. So, for example, I'm coaching someone right now, and that's what we've been discussing. As a matter of fact, he already had a good speech. He had a really, really good speech. We have changed it 60% to make it more universal, to make it we're starting now for an international audience, things that people can relate to. The other thing which is different today from when I competed 24 years ago is the world is more connected. The world is more online. So for example, my wife is from South Africa. And so I would always check in with her. It's like, okay, are you guys going to get, if I was to speak in South Africa, would they understand this? And she says, yes, everyone, duh, this is online now, And so it's not nearly as challenging as it was 24 years ago. Things, because we're so globally, we are literally a global village. So there's a lot of other things that people understand. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. But that sprouts a new question in my head. Is there any topic you should avoid at a global stage?
Okay, this is one person's opinion. Okay, one person's opinion. This is Ed's opinion. This is, again, I'm not saying what everyone should or should not do. Okay. When you're speaking on the global stage and the World Championship of Public Speaking, you've got an opportunity you're literally speaking before the world.
Yes.
And what are you going to do with that opportunity for, speaking in front of the world? I have actually met people. I said, hey, this is my 5 to 7 minutes, and I want to talk about, this challenge which is going on either in my world or this challenge which is going on with the world. And they had no interest in winning the world championship of public speaking whatsoever. They wanted to use that as an opportunity to get a message out. So, so that's something to consider. What are you trying to get out? Okay. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Mhm.
And I think because I'm a
Well,
contestant
actually,
myself.
let me finish. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You asked what to avoid. So my opinion is, I typically try to avoid religious things, controversial things. I definitely try to avoid politics. Again, this is my thought. This is my philosophy, if you will. The other thing which I am definite about is I don't like to put down other people. If you go into YouTube and you watch my speeches, all my speeches, the only person I ever make fun of is myself. And I have what I call self-deprecating humor. Now, there's something I want to share with you with regard to self-deprecating humor. I have this one speech where I try to fix my sprinkler system. I have a lawn which has an underground sprinkler system like a golf course. And I tried to fix it myself as opposed to doing it. It was a disaster. Okay. And so that story is very, very funny about me trying to fix something I'm not good at. So I have no problem being self-deprecating about an ability I'm not good at. But the one thing you will never see me make fun of is my ability to speak. And the reason for that is I never want the audience to doubt something which is my superpower. Never
Right.
make fun of something that you're good at, because you never want the audience to doubt you.
So this is now bringing me to a next question, is because I've taught myself the art of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Very shy, speaking in the front of the mirror kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say do not put yourself down as a speaker, and I'm trying to grow as a speaker, get into business of not just speaking, but of a speaking coach as well.
Mm-hmm.
But would it be okay to say, hey, I've come from here, this is how I was, but
Mm-hmm.
this is how I've come? That's
Yes.
a growth point, and that would be okay to bring to that stage.
Oh, absolutely. Talk about your progress. And in fact, when you are coaching executives, I coach, Fortune 500 executives. We focus on progress, not perfection. But the
Right.
point I'm trying to make is the story. I call the story is called When DIY, do it yourself, goes BAD. Okay.
Right.
And again, I'm married for a second time. This story took place when I was married to my first wife, and my first wife said, Ed, you're not that tooly. Pay the repairman. Hire someone who's an expert. And I didn't listen to her. So that's something I'm not good at. So I'm justified in making fun of Ed in that context, in an area I'm not that good. But in this case, this is your profession. This is something you aspire to grow in. This is something that people are going to pay you money. Never, never, never make a self-deprecating remark about yourself in that space. And that I'm very, very clear about, because you never want your clients, you never want your audience to doubt you. Never plant that seed. Why would you do that? And I see people do it all the time.
So something that just clicked to me when you said people are going to pay. And as you know, Toastmasters is all free. Coming from Toastmasters world, and you said from free to fee.
Mm-hmm.
Any tips, any advice you can give our listeners who are aspiring to make a career out of it, how to go from free to fee?
Okay. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with the statement that you just said. Toastmasters are free.
Yes.
That's not true. Toastmasters have day jobs. Toastmasters are executives of companies and organizations. Toastmasters hire people. Toastmasters are people. And that's the same true of corporations. The corporations and companies, so organizations, associations, they're people. And if you have something of value that they want, they will pay for it. My coaching clients pay me thousands of dollars. The coaching, I'm only coaching one person for the championship this year. And that's by choice. By the way, I've cut back on the number of people I coach for the championship because it's for me, it's exhausting. And my business at the point right now is significantly by a factor of like about 20 to work with corporations and companies. But people will pay you money. So here's my first piece of advice. The first sale is to yourself. If you don't believe you'll get paid, you never will. Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like I said before, unless you pay for something, you will rarely pay attention. So whenever someone approaches me about, coaching, so initially I'll have like an initial, 20-minute assessment. And then from there, I will give you a proposal. So if you want additional help, I'll give you a proposal. I typically give 3 options. It is an option of yeses. So the first option is, I call it, the big bang. It's everything that I could possibly do. There's an intermediate, and then there's just a basic. And that's how I go about doing my proposals. And if a person wants to work with me, the people who are serious, they'll hire me, and the people who are not, they go away. It's a beautiful thing, because the one thing I don't do anymore is I don't do pick your brain sessions, because a lot of people, what they will do is say, hey, can I pick your brain? Pick your brain. It's like, no, that sounds horrible. If someone was to literally pick your brain, you would die. And guess what? And if they metaphorically picking your brain, you will die, because financially you will go bankrupt. And this is what I tell people. I says, hey, this is my profession. This is what I do for a living. Do you have a job? Does your company or organization, or do you charge for that? Well, I do as well. Okay. So if you're serious about this, we can do this on the fee basis. And if not, then, I can recommend you to people who are, maybe they're amateurs and they're just getting started, and then the fee won't be an issue. But number one, the first sale is to yourself. Number two, get really, really clear about who your audience is. I'm a former C-level executive for Fortune 500 companies. Those are my customers. Those are my clients. I've sold $500 million worth of products and services. Guess what company? So the company I sent a proposal to, the reason they're talking to me is because I've sold $500 million worth of products and services, and they want to teach their people on how to be able to do that. That's my value proposition. So that's what I'm giving a proposal, to teach their people how to do this. Guess what? Regardless of the economy, I will never have a lack of customers because of the value that I provide. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. A big takeaway for myself, because I'm very new into this business. But that's a big takeaway. Thank you.
And if people, like, by the way, and this is something you've probably both learned from Craig. I learned this from Craig. So Craig taught me this. Craig Valentine, 1999 world champion of public speaking. In the audience, or in terms of clients or potential customers, there's 3 types. There's 3 types of prospects. They're the people who love you, and hey, let's do this, and they'll sign up right away. For example, the person I'm working with right now, he was a fan. We've been talking literally for years, and he says, okay, I'm entering the contest. I want your help, and boom, right away. Then there are people who are on the fence. They're not sure. They've never done this before. So the company that I've sent a proposal to before, they've never hired someone professionally in this space before. So they're not sure. Okay. And, if we have time, I can tell you, I can share with you some strategies in terms of how to deal with that. But they're on the fence. And then there are people who will never pay whatsoever. Ignore them. Okay. Don't spend 1 second with those individuals. All your messaging, all your marketing, all your sales activities should be directed towards the people who love you and the people who are on the fence, and ignore the rest. Okay. If someone, says, well, I don't want to pay for that, and, be respectful. Say, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And bye-bye, and move on to the next. I believe this. There is enough business on planet Earth for me to do business the way I want to do it, so I don't have to do business the way someone else wants to do it. I'm going to repeat that again. There's enough business on planet Earth to do business the way you want to do it, so you don't have to do it the way someone else wants you to do it. And that's the other thing is, my business is on planet Earth. I'm dealing with people from around the globe. My clients are around the world, etc. So that's another way that I actually was successful and still have a business from 2007 and the great and during COVID is, as opposed to just focusing locally, like here I live just outside of Las Vegas, or just United States, I looked at business worldwide.
So, Ed, I'm going to ask you to certainly elaborate on the strategies you said that you have successfully employed to convert the maybe, may not be to hell yes.
Okay. So I was speaking in Cancun, Mexico. I'm flying back, and because of weather, as opposed to flying back directly to Las Vegas, I have to fly through LA, Los Angeles. I'm now what my coaching client, not coaching client, my coach, Alan Weiss said, always fly first class. He says,
Right.
you'll meet people who can hire you. And I cannot tell you over the past decades how many times that's taken place. Anyway, I'm sitting next door to this guy by the name of Ricky. And Ricky says to me, what do you do? And I says, I help people rejection proof their pitches. And for the next 30 minutes, he asked me question after question after question after question, just based on that one sentence. So here's one thing. You have to have, and in Hollywood, it's called a log line or a one-liner. You have to have a one-liner that starts a conversation starter. So mine was, I help organizations rejection-proof their pitches. Okay. And he asked me a lot of questions. So anyway, so that's number one. He was interested. So I said, Ricky, here's the deal. How about we do this? And I asked him some questions. I says, hey, has there been a presentation that didn't go so well for you? He says, yeah. And it was as clear as my Saudi Arabia speech was to me. He had a similar story. So I said, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you, if that was recorded, here's my email. Why don't you send me a link to that speech? What I will do is I will evaluate that speech. I'll come up with a list of things that will help you the next time around. Okay. And we'll spend some time on that. So that's what we did. So he sends me a link. I do an analysis of that particular speech and presentation. And then we get on the call and actually go through it. Now, and again, this is like, I give this one-time free presentation, this free analysis, if you will. And then I said, he says well, how do I work with you? I says, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a proposal. Okay. 3 different options, an option of yeses, if you will. And that's what I did for him. Now let's talk about the psychology of what I did. All right. The backstory. Okay. Number one, my log line. My log line is designed to get a fast yes or a fast no. I help organizations rejection proof their pitches. If you're not interested in that, you're not interested. That's a good thing. So for example, don't take rejection personally. The timing may not be right, or that's not something that they're interested in. It's not a rejection of you. So don't take things personally. I never take things personally. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, once I discovered that he was interested, I was going to use, again, in my introduction, I'm on the Robert Cialdini faculty. And Robert Cialdini wrote a book called Influence. It has sold over 5 million copies worldwide. And he has 7 principles of influence. One of them I used here is reciprocity. Reciprocity is you give first without expectation of having something in return. So I gave him a free analysis of a speech that he had already done. I'd given him reciprocity in terms of my time and getting together and having a 30-minute call together. Okay. So that's reciprocity. Then I sent him a proposal. Now, here's a person who's never done this type of thing before. And during our call on the proposal, he had a lot of questions. That meant that he was on the fence. Psychologically, what does this mean now? So this is a signal to me that he needs a couple other things. Number one, he needs social proof.
Correct.
Just so I have I think 89 testimonials on LinkedIn. I have more testimonials on my website. I have a lot of testimonials. But ironically, that same week that we were talking, I got 2 text messages. I got one text message from a gentleman who was, I helped him on a keynote for Hong Kong in front of 10,000 people. And he texted me, he says, Ed, this is the best money ever spent in my career. Thank you so much. He sent me a text message. Then I had another executive who's a lobbyist. He's a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. And he was speaking in Hawaii. He sent me a similar text message for his presentation. So I got permission from both of them. I made screenshots and I said, Ricky, you could go on LinkedIn and see all my other recommendations, but this just happened just this week. And I sent him that. And again, he was unsure. He was uncertain. So I sent him social proof. Okay, so that's one of the principles of the Cialdini, social proof. Now, the other principle of Cialdini is authority. That's the first time I start talking about I won the world championship of public speaking. I'm also a certified speaking professional. I said, like, the world championship of public speaking is 30,000 contestants over a 9-month period. I won the entire competition. CSP, I'm in the top 12% of speakers worldwide. So now that it on the airplane, that wasn't important. He had no context for that, so I didn't mention it. I just say I'm a professional speaker and coach. That's it. But once he got serious, now this is when I bring that in. Are you with me? Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there, again, and here's other psychology. I always give 3 proposals. I mean, not 3 proposals, 3 options.
Correct.
The first option is the most expensive. Then there's a medium tier, and then there's a basic tier, if you will.
Sure.
And so the conversation changes from should I hire Ed to these are the different ways that I could use Ed. So these are some of the things I've done to close more business, if you will, and close more business at a higher rate. And by the way, I'm expensive. I tell people that all the time. I'm expensive, and I'm proud of that. I'm not here in America. We have Walmart. Walmart is a very inexpensive shopping place. I'm Nordstrom's. That's how I position myself. And I tell people, hey, I'm Nordstrom's. I'm expensive. And if I meet someone for the first time, I never give them a fee. My answer is I don't know. Like when Ricky asked me how much is this going to cost, I says honestly I don't know. It could be 0 or it could be like $100,000. And Ricky, I can see from your face if it's $100,000, we're probably not going to be working together. But Ricky, if it's 0, I could tell you we're not going to be working together either. The truth is somewhere in between. Let me ask you let's schedule a call where I can ask you some questions and then I can give you a proposal from there. Was that helpful for you?
Very much. Thank you so much for sharing such an elaborate psychological process of how you actually start to shift your business, or whether you're a Toastmasters or not, from free to fee. And I think all speakers also eventually want to become coaches because you've been in the business for so long that you want to pay it forward. And this is going to help a lot of people be clear from day 0 of their journeys of starting their businesses as coaches. So thank you so much for that. Ayesha, any thoughts on this before we wrap up?
No, I'm just in wow of the knowledge that Ed just shared with us, and especially being new, I'm going to definitely go back to the recording myself and see this. So that's a lot of wealth of knowledge that I think our audience will gain from. Thank you, Ed, for sharing a lot of secrets to say. But before we wrap, there's a question. You were world champion 2000. We have a question for you from world champion 1999, Craig Valentine. Let me bring him to the stage.
Okay. What's the question?
What, if anything, do you say to yourself right before you take the stage?
Ooh, that's a great question. Wow. There is someone in the audience, there is someone who is suffering in silence, and they need to hear what I'm about to say right now. Ed, don't let your ego get in the way. Deliver that message to that person who is suffering in silence.
Beautiful.
Wow, that resonated so well with me because the reason, and I'm sharing this today, is as Tanvi already know, that reason I want to become a public speaker is to create awareness on mental health and on neurodiversity and women empowerment. And as the minute you said somebody in the audience is suffering and needs your message, hit home run with me.
Deliver it to them. As a matter of fact, again, my coaching client from yesterday. So when I coach people, there's several different phases. Phase number 1, we got to get the words right. We got to get the words right. So once you get the words right, then we'll work on delivery, and then we'll work on staging.
Correct.
So we've been working for weeks because he had his so he made it to the district. So that's the division. He won his division yesterday. And so just before he went on stage, I shared that with him. I said, Keith, here's what I want you to do. I said, there's someone suffering in silence, and in this case, his story is about how he put someone down and how he got arrested for doing that. So I said, Keith, I want you to deliver this message to that Keith. That Keith is in the audience, younger Keith, the one who got arrested. What would be your advice to him now in that moment? I want you to deliver that message to him. I want you to deliver that message to anyone else who makes a poor decision in the moment, to rethink that decision. So that's who I want you to deliver that message to. That one individual, that one person who is suffering or who has suffered. And I mean, he was just blown away by that.
So am I. I'm definitely going to take it to my division contest.
Ed, my final parting question to you before we wrap up for today is 2 decades in the business of speaking. What would be your golden nuggets of wisdom for speakers who have been dabbling in the arts of speaking but are unable to cross the threshold and become professional speakers, global professional speakers? They do work here and there regionally whenever work finds them, but they're not able to convert it into a global rejection proof business.
Nice callback. I like that. Number one, get serious. Get serious. Stop dabbling. 100% is easier than 98%. Because if you do something 98%, there's always that 2% that you'll always draw back. You always change your mind. And our brains as humans, this is universal. We are risk averse. So if we're 98% committed, we're not 100% committed, we will eventually fall back to our older habits. So number one, be all in, be 100% committed. Another, two other pieces of advice. If you have here in the United States, it's called the National Speakers Association. In other countries, they have something similar. It's like in Europe, I think in England, they have this Professional Speakers Association. Right. There's also a Global Speakers Federation. Whatever it is for you, find out if there is a local or a national speaking organization, because their goal there is to help you to become a professional. I have, I've been an NSA member for 24 years because the purpose of that organization is to help me become a paid professional speaker. That's what the goal is there. Toastmasters, that is not their charter. Toastmasters their goal is not to help you become a paid professional speaker. Their job is to help you become better outside of speaker as a Toastmasters as a leader, and also to help you with your confidence. For someone who's never heard of Toastmasters, I just say, Toastmasters is the best organization on earth that helps people improve their confidence.
Yes.
So that's how I describe it to civilians. That's how it is. Because Toastmasters, we have our own lingo, we have our own language, we have our own, our own words, and and that can be intimidating. So number one, get serious. Number two, join a professional organization whose charter is to help you become professional. Surround yourself with other professionals, if you will. And the other thing is continue with Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a great place to practice your art and your craft. So to this day, when I have a new speech or a new story, etc., I will go to a local Toastmasters club, or I'll do it virtually to practice my craft, practice that story, work out the kinks, if you will. So those are the things I would do in terms of the honing your craft.
Beautiful.
And
Thank
getting
you so
paid
much.
for it.
Thank you so much for sharing the ABCs. And in fact, there's going to be a season 2 of a podcast, which is really going to be focused on the business of professional speaking. And we would love to see it then again to deep dive into some more hardcore strategies of how do you build a business around something that you love to do and something that the world needs as well. right? But for now, I would yield the stage to Aisha for her closing remarks and wrap up today's episode.
Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you, Ed. There's been so much learning points here for me as a speaker and as a coach, and I'm going to take it to my next level. And I think our audience is definitely going to enjoy, and they would definitely, most definitely would love to have you back for our season two,
Okay.
because you seem to be a person with wealth of knowledge. And on that note, that's a wrap from us, Aisha Hussain and Tanvi. But signing off,